So far, there's been no progress. I would say most of the New York delegation is going to vote no. We believe will have a severe impact on New York, especially the downstate area that we represent, where the property taxes and the state income tax level is high, and so much of that would be lost.
Tax reform and reduction is something that I'm very much in favor of and has a great deal of appeal for most Americans. I believe that if we start getting into healthcare issues with the individual mandate, that we send a very mixed message.
I wouldn't vote for this Senate version. Bottom line, there's a real problem here, and I'm assuming we'll be able to get to a yes. Yeah, I think this is a very solvable problem, but we need a dedication to solve it.
The thing Republicans want most on Capitol Hill, tax reform, is already facing some pushback from members of their own party. Joining us now is a member of the House Appropriations and Budget Committees, Republican Congressman Tom Cole of Oklahoma. Congressman, always good to see you, sir. I trust you feel you've got the votes to get this through at least the House today. I want to ask you about that inclusion of the repeal of the individual mandate from Obamacare. Is that something you could support as attached to a tax reform bill?
It certainly is something I could support, but a number of our members would have problems with it on the House. Look, we're moving through the normal legislative process. It's actually a Senate proposal, as you know.
Right.
So we'll see what they actually come up with and whether they put it in the bill, and we'll go to conference and work it out. But we're not going to lose a lot of votes over that particular issue, in my view. And again, when the Senate comes to its conclusion, we'll sit down, negotiate with them, and get a final bill across both chambers and onto the president's desk.
And one of the hang-ups, as you know well, for some members like Peter King that we heard there, is the elimination of the state and local tax deduction. Where are you on that, Congressman?
Well, look, I think we've made a reasonable compromise in the House bill. And look, I respect Peter King as much as any member we have, and I respect all members who are fighting for their constituents. But at the end of the day, personally, if you make $250,000 in Oklahoma City and $250,000 in New York City, you ought to be paying the same amount of federal taxes. Now, again, the tax code is skewed to the advantage of people in high tax states.
Right.
That's fair enough. People need to look after their constituents. I think we've tried to accommodate that in the House bill. I think we'll be able to sustain that accommodation in a final bill.
Jeremy Peters.
Congressman, good morning. The repeal of the individual mandate has become something of a kink in the hose here. I wonder, A, what is your position on whether or not the House should approve that provision of the Senate's plan? And B, if you don't, do you understand why some of your constituents would believe you to be, not you personally, but the Republican Party, to be insincere in its dedication to repealing and replacing Obamacare?
Well, first of all, as you say, it's right now not in the House bill. I wouldn't favor putting it in at the last minute here. Matter of fact, that's clearly not going to happen. We had opportunities to do it, chose not to do it. So we'll see if it makes it into the Senate plan, and then we'll sit down and negotiate and see, what makes sense. You've got to get the bill across the floor in both chambers to get it to the president. So I see this as a negotiable item. Personally, I don't have any problem with including it. I mean, making people buy a product that they don't want to buy and then fining them if they don't. Most of those fines mostly fall on people that make less than $50,000 a year. I find that pretty repugnant use of government power. But again, other people have a different view. Fair enough. This is a tax bill, and I think these kind of things are pretty easily negotiated out in the end.
Peggy Noonan.
Congressman Peggy Noonan here. I am wondering what your response was, and your response is, to Senator Ron Johnson's critique last night, in which he said, look, on the corporate side, this bill seems to give much better treatment to big corporations than to smaller businesses. And that's not acceptable. That's not what Republicans ought to be standing for. How do you respond?
Well, first of all, I have a lot of respect for Ron Johnson. I think he raises a very important point. Now, the bill overall lowers taxes for businesses large and small by and large, but big corporations come out a little bit better. If they can find a better solution in the Senate, I'm open to that. I certainly, applaud Senator Johnson for staking out his position. But at the end of the day, look, with all due respect to my friends in the Senate, they sort of fumbled on the 1 yard line on health care. I don't think they'll do do it again. I don't think they can afford to do it again. So my guess is they'll come to some sort of compromise over there. Then our team in the House, their team in the Senate will sit down, compromise again. We'll come out, I think, with a better product at the end. There's certainly things in the Senate bill actually I like better than in the House bill. So we'll find a middle ground and we'll get it to the president's desk. I think he'll have an opportunity to sign, the biggest tax reform since the era when you were working with Ronald Reagan. This is a big deal for us.
Rick Tyler.
Congressman Rick Tyler, good morning.
Good morning, Rick.
Obviously, Tom, you're a very skilled communicator, and large-scale tax reform is going to take public support. What do you think accounts for the lack of public support for this tax bill that we're trying to get through Congress? And wouldn't it be easier if the American people were much more behind it? And how will you change that?
Well, I think, first of all, we'll change it because I think the impact of the bill, and it's what we're banking on, will be obvious and will be profound and hopefully will set in fairly quickly. So, that's what we think will happen. In terms of why there's not support now, look, I think we live in a highly polarized age. I think Democrats are pretty skillful communicators. I think anything associated with Republican or Trump right now really pretty much reflects where that brand is. I don't think it's a serious look at what the tax bill actually does for individual Americans or business. So, again, fair enough. People are allowed to hold their opinions, and people they trust are telling them it's a bad bill. But at the end of the day, I think the bill will prevail in the House, and I think in the Senate, and get to the president, be signed into law, and we'll go from there. I think it'll do good things for the American people.
Peggy?
Yeah, Congressman, I'm wondering if there's a sort of, when you look at the numbers for support on the tax bill and you see they're not so great among Americans, I just wonder if Americans at this point trust Congress enough to create...
I don't know that I trust Congress enough.
All right. Well, but trusted enough to create a big, multi-part, many moving pieces, comprehensive bill. Americans at this point, I think, you know what, that's where they hide the mischief. That's where they hide the donor serving. That's where they hide the nonsense that doesn't make anything any better. First of all, do you agree with this, with my sense of how people might feel about Congress and these big bills? But second of all, why didn't you guys go simpler? Don't do a big, comprehensive, huge thing. Pass one little, discrete, simple tax bill. Pass it. Then come forward with another.
Well, first of all, I think if you really want to reform the code, doing it incrementally is extremely difficult to do and very time consuming. So I think you've got to move bold and hope that you're right. I think we are, and that hope over time the American people will trust it. In terms of, I think deeper question you're asking, do people trust the political system in general, not just Congress? No, they don't. They didn't when President Obama was here. I mean, it's not like Obamacare was done incrementally. It was one big bill that they thought would work. It didn't work for them politically. And we're actually, in a sense, making the same sort of gamble now. It's a big bill. It's a profound change. It's a generational change. We think it's the right thing for the country. We'll see. And I don't have any problem with anybody on either side of the debate. It's actually been a pretty good debate in Congress on both sides. People have different points of view. But at the end of the day, I think we'll win the debate here. I think ultimately the bill will make a difference for the American people. If it does, then we'll be successful in the long term politically.
So, Congressman Tom Cole, thank you very much. And to follow up to our conversation, I'm hearing from a couple of my sources in the White House. One guy pointing out that Ivanka got her way on the expanded child care tax credit and that she has been working on it for months. I don't know. I mean, I still kind of am concerned about the entire way that she presents herself as it pertains to women as a whole and what we wanted and what she promised. But for the record, there's a couple of articles out there that are citing her work on this piece of legislation. Coming up, we'll talk to one of the Congressman Cole's colleagues on the opposite side of the aisle, Congressman Adam Schiff. He's ranking Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee and is working to reject efforts to dismiss that infamous dossier on Trump and Russia. Morning Joe will be right back.